3 hours a week to get that 20 minutes. And their abilities are on level with their peers. It's just that reading deficit or things like that. So we're really trying to work now as we build our systems out to be more inclusive, have co-teaching because again, one of the things I took from a different experience was special education is a service, not a place.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brighter Together podcast. My name is Janet Courtney, and my special guest today is Brandon Bernard. Brandon is the Director of Special Education at Heritage Academy, and Heritage Academy is in Mesa, Arizona. Brandon, thank you for coming on, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here today.
So, Brandon, tell us a little bit about how you became the Director of Special Education, kind of your journey, and then tell us a little bit about Heritage Academy.
Yeah, of course. So originally, I'm from Buffalo, New York. So I did all of my early schooling out there. Initially, got my degree in social studies education. Made my way out to Arizona, so I traded the snow for the sun. But then was just teaching resource out here for a little bit. Um, Made a couple changes to different schools. Became a department chair at one of the schools that I was working at. From there, I transitioned to an instructional coach, and this opportunity opened up, and didn't feel like I was ready for it, but took the leap of faith and applied and got the position. So, we're really just trying to focus on really improving and helping just all kids with special needs and really supporting them throughout their whole education. But Heritage Academy, we're a charter school K-12 network out here in Arizona. So we have 7 campuses all across what's called the Greater Phoenix Valley. So headquartered out in Mesa, but we have 2 additional campuses in Queen Creek, 2 in Maricopa, one of which we're opening up this year. So we're excited about that. And then we have one out in Glendale and Laveen as well. So just some surrounding areas of Greater Phoenix.
Awesome. So you said kindergarten through 12th grade, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
about how many students do you guys have enrolled right now?
Ooh, I mean, we're going through that enrollment period right now over the summer, so I think we're floating around somewhere about 4 to 5,000 kids overall, and
Wow.
I checked on our special education numbers, and we're upwards of 400 today, with that new school opening. I think we're over 400 now, and then we have approximately, between 2 and 300 for our 504 students as well.
Wow. Wow. You're busy. You are
Yeah.
definitely busy. Wow, that's amazing. So how long has a Heritage Academy been a charter school? Has it been open, I guess?
So Yeah, so they're actually one of the first few charters to be issued out in the state of Arizona. So our flagship campus out in Mesa opened about 30 years ago. We're
Wow.
celebrating our 30th year this year, which is nice because it's in conjunction with the 250th anniversary
Yeah.
of America. So that works out really well. And then most of our other campuses have been founded within the last 10 years. So we're still growing right now, but we're really starting to increase our footprint across the valley.
Congratulations. That's exciting. That's amazing. 30 years. That's longer than my oldest child, which is pretty cool. I feel old.
Yeah.
She's 28 now and it's like, gosh, where did 28 years go? But boy, when you look at that. Did it start out K-12 or did you go from did they start like kindergarten and grow up? Some of them grow backwards. It just kind of depends.
Yeah, so our founder actually started it out in Mesa campus as a 7th through 12th grade
Ah,
school, so it's
mhm.
still a 7 through 12 right now. But purchased an old church, renovated it, and real just off the ground story with our entire network.
Yeah. And you guys do some really amazing programs. Tell us a little bit about, the what what makes Heritage Academy unique.
Yeah, so we have a couple of things. So first and foremost, with our academics, we really try to prioritize dual enrollment. So earning those college degrees as you're going through your high school classes. So I want to say it was something like $14 million was saved in terms of tuition. Most of our kids graduate with at least an associate's degree. We have some kids graduating with 2. I think we had a handful of students across all of our campuses that ended up with 3 associate's degrees. So we have a really big focus on our dual enrollment, which is huge for our kids. But one of the other things for us is we really try to focus in on classical education. really try to focus in on, American values and American exceptionalism as well too. So a lot of our curriculum is weaved through that lens. So we try to teach the founding fathers and try to help our scholars, which is what we refer to as our students. So we try to teach our scholars just the things that the founders envisioned and how a lot of the problems, whether it be 40 years ago or 40 years in the future, they created a really strong document that's going to help us navigate and solve these complex issues that we face every day.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. There's a lot of faith in those documents as well. I'm a Christian. I don't shy away from it. So it's very exciting to hear that because there's just these men that found it. And I love that we're talking about it. Today is, for those of you that are listening, this probably will be published after July 4th, but it's June 18th, 2026. So we are just on the cusp of the 250th anniversary of our nation's birth. And I'm old enough that I remember, I was young, that 1976, I remember the 200th and what a big deal that was back then. Now I was a
Yeah.
child. Thank goodness I can say I was a child. I wasn't a grown up in 76, but I was at 8, old enough to remember and to be excited about the fact that we were celebrating 200 years, and here we are 50 years later and it's 250.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal.
Yeah. It's really special.
Countries don't survive as long. And I think that that's something that is just a testament to the United States and who we are, and our resilience and our acceptance. And anyway, so that's
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. I agree.
But you're the director of special education. So how, with the excellence, the academic excellence, how do you ingrain that into or meld those two things together? Because it's hard for special education kids, and I'm not saying that they can't. Please don't hear that from me. But that's a fast pace. So how do you
Yeah.
guys manage that?
Yeah, no, it's definitely complex, and I think that's one of the things that, you find in any educational system is that, right, you have these very complex issues and they're difficult to solve, they're difficult to navigate, but you try to, figure out what's gonna work best and what might work here doesn't necessarily work everywhere else. But I think for us, right, all of our dual enrollment classes are actually our on-level general education classes. So we have to really focus for us on building those systems and building those systems of support um, wherever they may be. So for us specifically, it's really trying to integrate our services, really that kind of interdisciplinary studies, right? So I know when I was going in school, we'd be reading a book in language arts class, but it's also history related, and we're trying to incorporate in that our history studies and things like that. So we really try to take that approach in our special education programming and try to really bring supports together. There's a lot of different things that we need to do from larger admin level down to the campus level. So there's a lot of communication that's going on constantly. There's a lot of training, a lot of support. One of the things that we always take pride in is we don't lead from the back, right? We try to take anything that comes up in these situations that are difficult or complex. We try to be in the classroom with the teachers, whether it be the general education teacher or the special education teacher, to really provide that support because I know for me and a lot of my colleagues at our administrative level, we're not going to ask teachers to do something that we don't feel comfortable ourselves, or if we don't feel comfortable ourselves doing it, right, we're going to be there alongside of them and not expect them to have to do something that we're unwilling to do ourselves. But yeah, it's a lot of system developing and really just trying to find out where you know, there's crossover between ADA and IDEA, right? There's crossover between high school and post-secondary, whatever that may look like. And I think that's really the beauty of, special education is we're having to be aware of all those things at all times, right? I know for transition planning and things like that, we're constantly having to take those things into consideration, whether it be for future education, whether it be for workplace, whether it be for, wanting to enlist in the military. We're having to think about um, these particular individual issues that a child may struggle with, but how we're going to help them, navigate them, cope with them, find resources outside of the school setting. So there's a lot that goes into it for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So do you do a track that is specific for graduation versus maybe a certificate? How are you guys handling that?
Yeah, so in Arizona, we don't have a certificate of
Okay.
completion.
Mhm.
It's just a degree program, but that's one of the other challenges we do face. Arizona requires 22 credits for graduation. We require 26. So again, we're putting that little extra bit on for that rigor. So we're having to really kind of navigate some complex issues, right? We have situations where um, kids may have a math disability and they're going to struggle in that college level class. So it's not just about, the instruction that takes place, whether it be in general education or in special education. We offer tutoring every day after school for pretty much all subjects, but it's trying to develop the things that kids need because one of my philosophies is really developing your toolbox, right? And so when you come across some of these different situations, you might have one kid that has some very, very unique needs. And you might not see those needs again for, 20, 30 years. But as an educator, we got to develop those tools because we can't just say, hey, I know this child is really going to struggle. So we're going to help them get along. But if they don't make progress, we're going to be okay with that. And that's not at all what we want to do or would ever expect for a teacher to, have that mindset. So it's, what other tools and what other resources do we need in terms of training, in terms of curriculum, in terms of adult support. And it's also about that home school relationship as well too. So we really try to be in contact with our parents, keep them up to date. And of course, when we see things coming up, we're trying to be as proactive as we can to really address some of the issues. But at the end of the day, it's really just trying to figure out what support we can provide to make sure that scholar is as successful as they could possibly be.
I love that. I love that because you're really, IDEA and IEPs is individual, right? We're always looking at the individual, and that sounds like you guys have taken that up a notch to let's make sure that all of our kids are moving in a direction that's positive for them and helpful for them. And I love that. I love that. So do you do some? So take us through like a little bit of like some of the programs maybe that you have at the littles, and then maybe something how you do some of it in the higher grade levels.
In terms of like
Just special
curriculum.
education, or like do you have specific like how do you identify? Well, that's a great place to start. Like how are you identifying kids that have disabilities or special needs? I'm sure some of them are coming to you with an IEP, but if you have kindergartners, where does it begin for you guys?
Yeah, so obviously, with any enrollment, it starts with our child find process. So,
Yeah.
we have our 45-day screeners where we're looking for any concerns that we're trying to identify and get a jump on it. So, especially like with kindergartners, right? You don't want to um, delay that potential need to provide support for disabilities. But ongoing, we also have something called our scholar study team. So, in terms of systems like we were talking about a little bit. That's one of those systems that we're constantly trying to revamp and really make sure it's attuned to not only our needs as teachers, as staff, as administrators, but also it's meeting the needs of our scholars, right? I know one of the things that I heard very early on when I started teaching was, the goal of any special education teacher should be to work themselves off a job. Because if we're doing that, we're teaching kids, we're closing that skill deficit, we're teaching kids how to cope and accommodate for their disabilities, and we're also teaching them how to self-advocate. So, um, you know, with that mindset, that's also very much the mindset of our scholar study team, is we're trying to identify any concerns early on, whether they be, just general concerns or there actually are, potential special education needs, but trying to provide interventions and supports early on, but also getting teachers to recognize um, just because a kid is identified for scholar study team, or just because your classroom is struggling a little bit, doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to qualify for special education services. But at the same time, we could go through a whole process, and at the end of that process, as you know, for the evaluation process, they still might not qualify. So that scholar study team for us is really about identifying some of the different strategies or interventions or instructional approaches that a student might benefit from, and applying them to the classroom. So again, how I was mentioning earlier, right? Um, we're wanting to provide that support and add to your toolbox because one year you might have 10 scholars that enter in with they're 2 grade levels behind in reading, but there's nothing in their evaluation that indicates a disability. The teachers don't have a suspicion of disability, yet we're still dealing with kids who are 2 grade levels behind in
Right.
reading. So we got to figure out different ways to, close that gap.
Hmm.
And that same mindset is also applied for our special education scholars as well.
Are you struggling to keep speech therapy fully staffed or tired of high turnover? You're not alone. At Lighthouse Therapy, our speech language pathologists are seasoned professionals, and most of them have over 16 years of school based experience. They're not just qualified, they're consistent, relational, and results driven. We offer 3 flexible delivery models: virtual therapy, hybrid therapy, and in person therapy. It's speech therapy done right for you and your students. Learn more at lighthouse-therapy.com/brighter together. Wow. Wow. I love that. So, so you guys are doing, are you also doing like career and technical education? Like if they're not going to go on to college, someone said to me, we don't want to graduate them to the couch. And I was like, yeah, that's such a great comment because it's like, what kinds of things, what kind of programs are you guys working on at that level, at the high school level, to get them outside of the couch, right? I get them what's
Yeah.
next after high school.
Yeah, and so for a lot of our kids, we definitely serve that niche of college
Yep.
bound scholars, and so
Mm-hmm.
even with our own special education cohort, we do have probably I would say a higher instance of like that twice exceptionality where they have a disability in one area, but they might be gifted in another, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to navigate some of those issues. We're definitely starting to develop a little bit more of career oriented classes and things like that. But we definitely do have a much more bigger focus on that college readiness and that college preparedness, which again is why it's so critical for me as a special education director in our department to really figure out how we build those systems and supports around. Because even one of the things that we kind of notice as we're navigating dual enrollment currently. Where we're seeing, the college requirements kind of butt heads with our secondary requirements. The colleges still expect the scholars, even if they're in 11th grade, to advocate for themselves, speak about their accommodations and things like that. So it's trying to really help kids navigate that in a more scaffolded or structured setting. So as we go through the years, they're able to self-advocate better. They attend their IEP meetings.
Nice.
And then by the time they go, yeah, and by the time they go to college, whether it be online, in person, wherever, they know, hey, the first thing I need to do is find out where the Office of Disability Services is so I can submit my evaluation or my IEP or my 504 and work to get some accommodation so that way the success I had here at Heritage can carry over
Right.
into that college.
Yeah, because sometimes it's not cognitive ability. It's something else, right? It's just just difficulty attending or focusing or whatever, or you, take your pick. But
Yeah.
it's so. Do some of your kids in special education? Do you have some that graduate with an associate's degree? Then
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, most of our graduates do. Um, Obviously, like I was mentioning earlier too, our dual enrollment classes are our on-level classes.
Hmm.
But we do understand we do have some scholars who either aren't going to be college bound or they have modifications or certain accommodations in their IEP that conflict with the dual enrollment course. It changes it too much.
Okay.
So it's not it the things they need in high school alter the curriculum so much where they can't earn that college credit, which is fine. But we work through that, and they're still taking those same courses. So what I think is really great about especially our model is, if we know you're going to struggle in math because you have a math disability, but you're supposed to be taking calculus, we're still going to provide that support in order to help scaffold you to get to that next level once you do go to college or you go on to your career, what have you. But you can take that course still for high school credit. You're still with your same age peers. You're still, it's a really good embodiment of inclusion for sure.
Inclusion, yeah, yeah. I was just going to say. So, are all of your classes inclusive classes, or do you have any that are specifically just special education? This is a special education class, or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So we do have special education. We call them resource classes
Mm-hmm.
here
Mm-hmm.
for math, English, and then we have just the standalone support class for that resource level. So a lot of our kids who do require special education services are in that standalone resource class for their direct support. In terms of, if they have like 20 minutes a week for reading comprehension, they don't need to be in a special education class for 3 hours a week to get that 20 minutes. And their abilities are on level with their peers. It's just that reading deficit or things like that. So we're really trying to work now as we build our systems out to be more inclusive, have co-teaching because again, one of the things I took from a different experience was special education is a service, not a place. So
Mm-hmm.
we're really
Very good.
trying to work on bringing those services to uh, kids and where they're at because we know especially too if we're pulling kids out of class or we're scheduling them for a standalone resource class. We're just only increasing that gap because the content isn't as rich or in depth. And I always tell my teachers this too. Like I'm not a math teacher, so I can teach math, but some of the nuances or the things that make it click for kids in their head, I'm probably not going to be able to speak to. So we really want to keep kids with those content area experts because they have all those different strategies and
Okay.
instructional tools to really help make things click for our scholars.
Nice. I love that so much. That is fantastic. And I love the fact that you have kids that graduate with an associate's degree. I that's so impressive. I love that. I love that for the kids. I love that for the parents.
Yeah.
And what a boost for children. And you said it's also not an identity. Like your label doesn't label you as that thing. That's just what you struggle with, and that's what we're going to help you with. But there's a human being that has desires and wants and needs, and it's so important for gen ed people and others to understand. I think as special education people, teachers in general, I think they get that. But when you really embrace that this is just a part of who I am, it doesn't
Yeah.
define me, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, for sure. That was another saying that I heard all the time too is, all kids are gen ed students first. So,
Yeah.
ignore the disability, ignore the labels, ignore the supports. How do you support kids? Because, that's one thing we really do firmly believe in is that, you can put in the work and the effort, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You can accomplish things despite your disabilities, your challenges.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have different challenges. Everyone does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily about, uh, identifying what your challenge is, but really it's about identifying how do I overcome my
Yeah,
challenge?
yeah. I'll tell you, I am not a person that is. I don't learn from reading. I never have been. I love to read. I'm an avid reader, but I can't sit down with a manual. Like don't give me hand me a manual and expect me to learn how my car works. No, I'm not going to do that. I'll hand it to my husband and have him tell me. I'm an experiential and an auditory and a visual learner. I've never been a give me the instruction. Tell me the instruction and I'll do it, or show me how to do it and I'll do it. But don't I swear I went to grad school and I'd buy the books, and the only time I cracked those books was when I had to look something up. Tell me to read a chapter. No, tell me about the chapter. Let me, tell me what it's about. Lecture on the chapter for me. I'm not going to, if I had a teacher that just wanted us to go in and read, I was dependent on my class colleagues to help me to get through those classes because that was not how I learned. I'm 58 years old now. And I'd like to say I'm 48, but I'm not. I'm 58 years old, and I just don't learn that way, and I never will. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love that you
Yeah. And
can identify that. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, and I think that's the one thing too. I always try to, especially being in a leadership role, I try to, um, relate to our staff, our teachers, our kids, and so, I'll always say like, I never took chemistry. I know if you drop me in a chemistry classroom, I'm going to struggle. Reading is difficult for me as well too. I've learned different strategies and just tricks and shortcuts to, like you said, find the information, access
Mm-hmm.
the information. But yeah, if you stuck a 500-page novel in my face, I'm gonna struggle. Not because not because I struggle with reading, but I have endurance issues with reading and things like that.
Yeah,
So,
we all have. Yeah.
we all have issues.
Yeah,
So,
we all have our ways, and I love that. I love that that's where education is going because it's critical, and it doesn't slap a label on you and identify you and put you in that box, and that's fantastic. So, so one thing I want to ask you about, just personally between us, is Lighthouse is my company, as you know, and we started working with you guys this year. So tell us a little bit, if you can, just what how Lighthouse became something that could help. And I know we're doing special education for you guys with a deaf and hard of hearing teacher. We call them DHH teachers here, as you guys do as well. But how have we as a company helped? How did we help you guys?
yeah. No, it's a great question. So, um, kind of just touching back a little bit on our story, right? Even though our flagship campus has been open for 30 years, we're still in that growing phase and building out. So, as you build out, new students enroll. Um, and then as you hear about new students enrolling, other scholars want to come. So we're growing a lot. And I think that's one of the things that, again, as we're building our systems, we're having scholars enroll that um, have different needs that we weren't used to or prepared for, right? So, you know, in a perfect world, I would love to have a position, every single possible position under the sun staffed. And when you need it, right, they're there and you just pull them. But obviously that's not the reality, funding, all that jazz. But so what ended up happening is, as I took on this role, we had a growing need for deaf, hard of hearing. So we were supporting that through a different provider, and we were just looking at, how do we, maximize the support and look for, different opportunities to really capture that necessary support because that's one of those challenges too. Is we have to have a specialized person in that role, able to provide that service and that instruction. So, um, as we were looking around, there just wasn't, um, options that were going to work for us out in this area. Um, just based on our needs. We don't have a big need, but it's still a need. And being a public charter school, we still have to address that need. So, in just doing a search or a phone call came across my desk, and it was that message that I was looking for because I was really really struggling trying to find a provider. And what I love about Lighthouse is just that flexibility. So for us, the DHH services were virtual, and that was super helpful just because for our campuses are very spread out. So not only do we not have a high instance of need, we also have a lot of geographic barriers that make it difficult for us. So at our farthest point, some of our campuses are close to an hour and a half apart. So to have one person provide all that support, you'd be driving more than you're actually teaching. So um, so that wasn't something that was going to work for us. But yeah, so in partnering with Lighthouse, it was great because we have that DHH support. It's just constant. It's there. We have the tools that allow our scholars to access it. And what is really helpful too is we have that ongoing communication, that ongoing support. The provider that you guys assigned to us was great in terms of collaborating with teachers, collaborating with me,
Love that.
working with the students. And so it was just a really great experience for us.
Awesome. One of the things about us that I truly love is we're never afraid to step into a new service. I'm a speech pathologist. Our mission is to be a therapy company run by therapists for the betterment of students, and that has expanded into special education teachers. And so when we decided we're going to do this, we always want to do it well. We never want to just provide it. It's like it's not just another checkbox. Oh, we do this now. Oh, we do this now. Oh, we do this now. If we're going to do it, we want to do it with um, expertise and knowledge, because I'm not a DHH teacher. I'm not.
No, yeah,
So making sure that we have really strong providers, but we also don't limit our schools. One of the other beautiful things I love about us is we don't have investors. We're a family run, and faith is our center core value. So we do everything from the lens of how can we serve? How can we serve our schools? How can we make sure that our schools are getting exactly what you need, right? So we don't have any minimums. We don't have, you don't have to give us 10 kids. You don't have to spend $25,000. You can come to us and say, hey, I need this one thing, or I need this one
yeah,
assessment, and we will provide it. And I love the fact that we found you and you found us, and we now have a partnership that gives your children, as long as you need us, an
yeah,
opportunity. There'll come a time when you don't need us for that, but maybe something else. Who knows? And
yeah,
and I love that we have that partnership, because it really makes a difference. And now you got your children, your students, your scholars got the services that they needed, and we were able to provide those, and it's a beautiful thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just even speaking to that, I mean, that was exactly our issue is just, we had such a few number of kids in minutes, so we had other providers that were unwilling to do it, but I think that's also the great thing that you just talked about there. It's not just about checking the box that, "Hey, we did provide it," you know, that that's also something that I'm also, looking for in this relationship too, is right, having someone who's willing to communicate with another teacher or
Mm-hmm.
go outside of kind of the bare minimum of expectations, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
their expectation is to provide those services, whether it be 30 minutes a month, an hour a month, or what have you. But like you said, you do try to provide those that staff who is willing to help and go above and beyond and not just, check the box off, hey, I did my assignment this month and move on. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm very appreciative of that because that's probably one of the more harder things on my end is dealing with the financial side of education.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and it's a struggle. We know that too. We know that too. We have,
yeah,
and we're for profit. We're not a nonprofit, so we have margins and all of those things. But at the end of the day, if we have, and this goes back to my faith. At the end of the day, it's a human being that we're serving. So if we are doing it well, honest to goodness, God blesses us, because if you take care of humans and you do it right and you love on them and make sure, I always tell people the rest of it comes. It really does come. And it's just been, by the time
mhm.
this June 7/10/18 was when Lighthouse was established. So we are just
Oh
after our birthday,
my God,
you know,
yeah,
6 days after our 250th, we're going to turn 8. And it's just an exciting time to be 8 years in. And people say, first year is this many businesses fail, and then there's 3 years, and then there's 5 years, and then there's 7 years. And I'm like, we beat all of those. So it's
yeah.
exciting.
No, it's awesome.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, and just to touch on
sure.
the one thing that you were saying there with, you love these kids and you put the good out in the world and you get good back. I mean, that's one of the things our director of education always talks about too, is when you're, teaching these scholars, love them like your own because,
Mm-hmm.
you are leaving an impression and an imprint on these young minds and you're really trying to, again, going back to our mission and our core values and connecting it to the founding values of our country and things like that.
Right.
Right? We're wanting to put, good civically responsible citizens out there. And so, you gotta, really just pour yourself into, what you do and into the scholars and just really help them be as successful as they can. Because at the end of the day, right, if we can make everyone more successful, we just are better off,
Mm-hmm.
as a
Yeah,
society.
absolutely. Yeah. We are training up the next generation, and they need to know that they can, and that they're capable, and that they're loved, and that someone cares about them. There's so much of that needs to happen. Okay, so we've been 30 minutes in. I was like, I told him, I said 20, 25 minutes. We're already 33
Yeah,
minutes in. It's been a great conversation, Brandon.
that's
Where
for sure.
do people go if they want to learn a little bit more about Heritage Academy? Because I'm sure we sparked some people's interest, and I want to make sure they can find you guys.
Yeah, let's hope so. So if you want to find out any more information about us, you could just go to heritageacademyaz.com. Where like I said, we have 7 campuses across the greater Phoenix Valley. It is summer break right now, but in just over 4 short weeks, we'll be starting for some of our campuses the 26-27 school years. So, I know like I said, we're still looking, we're still growing, we're still looking for enrollments. We're opening new schools, so definitely
Mhm.
check us out. And we have tons of information. You can do campus tours. We have a wide array of just great opportunities. So definitely check us out.
Well, Brandon, thank you so much. Thank you for being willing to come on and tell us
Of course.
about your experience, about your kids' experience, about your passion. It's definitely you're making the world a better place, and we're brighter together.
Appreciate it.
So thank you so
We are for sure.
much.
Thank you, Janet.